For more than 420 years, her DNA has been locked beneath Westminster Abbey. We've sequenced mammoths frozen for 40,000 years, but never the woman who ruled half the known world. Queen Elizabeth I remains untested, untouched, and the truth hiding in her blood may explain the poison she painted on her own face, the mask that made her immortal and slowly destroyed her. For centuries, her death has been wrapped in rumor, whispers of madness, poison, and divine punishment. But now science is peeling back the legend without opening her tomb. Virtual autopsies, molecular scans, and trace DNA from relics are revealing this isn't a story about vanity. It's about control, how one queen turned her body into propaganda and her pain into power. Before we begin, subscribe to Root and Relic, where forgotten history meets modern science. Because every fossil, every bone, and every strand of DNA rewrites the story of us. The Tudor dynasty began with blood and ended in silence. Queen Elizabeth I reigned for 45 years, more than twice the average Tudor lifespan of 38. And when she died in 1603, her lineage ended forever. She left no children, no heirs, no genetic continuation of England's most iconic family. Her body was sealed inside a lead-lined coffin beneath Westminster Abbey, and by royal decree, it has never been opened. Yet the world around her has already been decoded. Scientists have mapped the genome of King Richard III, found beneath a Leicester car park in 2012, confirming his Plantagenet ancestry through mitochondrial DNA. They have read Beethoven's genome from a single hair strand, exposing his illnesses and heritage. But Elizabeth's genetic code, the last of the Tudors, remains locked. Her father, Henry VIII, may have carried the Kell antigen mutation, a rare blood disorder believed to cause the miscarriages that changed England's history. Her cousin, Mary, Queen of Scots, passed her mitochondrial line to the Stuarts, blood still flowing in today's royals. Elizabeth alone left no biological trace, except for what she touched: strands of hair in wigs, skin cells on gloves, the Bacton altar cloth cut from her gown. Each relic could hold fragments of the code that built and doomed her dynasty. To find the truth inside that code, we have to look beyond the tomb, into the chemistry of the mask that defined her power. In 16th century England, a pale skin wasn't fashion. It was authority. To look untouchable was to rule. Elizabeth achieved that with Venetian ceruse, a smooth ivory paste made from white lead carbonate mixed with vinegar. Modern analysis shows it contained up to 77% pure lead, around 800,000 parts per million, nearly 50 times the lethal limit set by modern toxicology. Each morning, attendants stirred the mixture in silver bowls, coating her face, neck, and hands. Each night, they scraped it off, removing flakes of skin and traces of blood. Microscopic cracks allowed the poison to seep directly into her bloodstream. Decades of exposure caused symptoms now familiar to science: tremors, insomnia, infertility, mood swings, and the creeping madness of lead encephalopathy. To Elizabeth, this wasn't vanity, it was strategy. Her whitened face projected divinity, purity, and command. It silenced rivals who doubted a woman's right to rule, turning fragility into fear. But every stroke of that cosmetic brush was a chemical betrayal. The same substance that made her image eternal was quietly rewriting her biology, one poisoned cell at a time. Long before Photoshop or social media, Elizabeth I built one of the most powerful filters in human history: her image. In an age without photography, portraits were propaganda. Each brushstroke was a political act, each color a coded message. By the 1590s, her mask of youth had become more than fashion. It was national strategy. The queen controlled her likeness as ruthlessly as she controlled her court. Only portraits showing her as young, flawless, and radiant were allowed to circulate. In 1596, she issued a royal decree. All unseemly portraits, any that revealed age or imperfection, were to be hunted down and destroyed. Painters were forced to follow official face patterns. The most famous, the Darnley portrait, painted around 1575, became the model for every authorized depiction of her. Even when she was nearly 70, portraits showed the same ageless, alabaster skin and calm, knowing gaze. This wasn't vanity, it was survival. Elizabeth ruled a patriarchal empire without a husband, without an heir, and surrounded by rivals who saw female aging as weakness. So she erased time itself. Each flawless portrait told her subjects and her enemies that England's queen was eternal. Her painted mask wasn't a lie. It was a weapon. It projected stability in an age of war and rebellion. It turned fragility into mythology. And yet behind the paint and power, her body was collapsing. The mask that made her immortal was now consuming her. In 1562, smallpox nearly killed her. It left her face scarred, and her fear of imperfection permanent. From that moment, Venetian ceruse became her armor. But the same mask that protected her image began to consume her flesh. Her love for sugar, a rare luxury in Tudor England, made things worse. By her 50s, her teeth had turned black. By her 60s, most had rotted away. Sir John Harrington, her godson, wrote that her teeth are black as pitch, her breath foul, her speech difficult. Chronic abscesses made eating agony, yet she demanded candied fruits daily, a royal indulgence that fed the infections killing her. Science can now trace the perfect storm her doctors never saw. Lead from her cosmetics suppressed her immune system. Sugar fueled bacterial infection. Together they built the silent cascade that leads to septicemia, blood poisoning. And beneath that physical decay lay another wound. The death of Robert Devereux, the Earl of Essex, her closest confidant and forbidden love, broke something deep within her. She signed his death warrant with the same hand that once adorned him with rings. It was a decision that haunted her to her last breath. Each layer of paint she wore after that wasn't vanity. It was grief made visible, a mask of state hiding a heart that had already begun to rot. If you had stood in her court and watched the Queen hide her pain behind that mask, would you have told her to stop or admired her strength? Tell me in the comments. I'm curious which you'd choose. 4 centuries after her death, modern science finally tried to read the truth her tomb refused to reveal. In 2023, Sky History's Royal Autopsy brought together forensic pathologist Dr. Brett Lockyer and biological anthropologist Professor Alice Roberts to reconstruct the medical mystery of Elizabeth's final days. They couldn't touch her remains, but they could rebuild her. Using historical descriptions, facial metrics from portraits, and chemical data from surviving cosmetics, the team performed what they called a virtual autopsy. 3D cranial scans and digital anatomy models simulated her bones, tissues, and organs with forensic precision. X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy analyzed pigments from paintings to confirm the composition of her makeup. Pure lead carbonate mixed with vinegar, starch, and occasionally mercury. Their findings were chilling. Elizabeth's teeth, blackened and rotting, weren't just cosmetic damage. They were infection gateways. Chronic abscesses likely spread bacteria into her bloodstream, triggering what modern medicine calls sepsis, a systemic infection that shuts down organs slowly and painfully. Combined with chronic lead poisoning, her symptoms make haunting sense: hair loss, tremors, swollen joints, depression, and exhaustion. Her refusal to eat or sleep, her strange silences, her paranoia, all classic markers of lead encephalopathy, a neurological breakdown caused by years of toxic accumulation. Roberts concluded that Elizabeth's body was collapsing under the weight of her own mythology. The mask she created to project perfection, she explained, was poisoning her every day she wore it. The Queen had turned her flesh into propaganda, and her propaganda into poison. Despite this forensic breakthrough, one mystery remains untouched: her genetic code. Unlike Richard III, whose DNA revealed ancestry, eye color, and even hair pigment, Elizabeth's genome has never been sequenced. The reason isn't scientific, it's sacred. Westminster Abbey strictly forbids genetic testing of royal remains. To open her coffin would mean opening history itself, and the Church, the Crown, and Parliament have agreed it will never be done. Yet modern science may not need to. Researchers have already sequenced Beethoven's genome from strands of hair. Current Biology 2023. They've recovered ancient DNA from parchment, from paintings, even from the dust of medieval tombs. The same could be done for Elizabeth. Her wardrobe relics, like the Bacton altar cloth, confirmed to be cut from one of her gowns, still hold microscopic traces of skin oil, sweat, and epithelial cells. Her surviving wigs and gloves might contain hair shafts embedded with mitochondrial DNA, enough to reconstruct maternal lineage or reveal genetic diseases. Even the air inside her sealed coffin could hold environmental DNA, a technique proven in 2023, when scientists sampled tomb air in France and extracted human genetic fragments without disturbing remains. If such a study were ever permitted, Elizabeth's DNA could confirm whether she inherited Henry VIII's Kell antigen mutation, which caused reproductive failure in his wives, or if she carried markers for autoimmune conditions like lupus or thyroid disorders, both capable of explaining her late-life fatigue and swelling. Her genome might even reveal traces of heavy metal accumulation, proving definitively that her beauty rituals became her poison. But until the Abbey allows it, her genetic truth remains locked inside that marble tomb, waiting in the dark, preserved in silence, like a code England still fears to read. By the final years of her reign, Elizabeth I was a living monument, adored by her subjects but trapped inside a failing body. Her attendants described her sitting motionless for hours, whispering to ghosts no one else could see. She refused to eat, refused to rest, refused even to lie down, convinced that if she slept, she would never wake. This wasn't stubbornness. It was lead-induced psychosis. After 4 decades of exposure, the metal had invaded her brain, causing tremors, delirium, and paranoia. Symptoms modern science calls lead encephalopathy. Her fingers were so swollen that her coronation ring, symbol of her marriage to England, had to be cut from her hand. Her hair, once fiery red, was now a fragile veil of gray, and her body, once the image of divine power, had turned frail and trembling. Yet she never surrendered control. When her council begged her to rest, she said coldly, "Must is not a word to be used to princes." She ruled through agony, her body collapsing beneath the weight of her own image. The queen who defied popes and kings now faced her final enemy, herself. It's haunting, isn't it? Would you rather remember Elizabeth as the flawless queen she wanted the world to see, or as the woman who fought her own body until the end? Drop your thoughts below. And still, she refused to look away, because the moment she did, the illusion would die. When Elizabeth finally died on March 24, 1603, at nearly 70 years old, no official cause was recorded. She had forbidden an autopsy, commanding that her body remain untouched for eternity. Her death was followed by silence, and then by myth. Weeks after her burial, a chilling story spread through London. Her former lady-in-waiting, Elizabeth Southwell, claimed that the Queen's corpse had burst open inside its coffin, releasing a foul vapor that sickened the priests at Westminster Abbey. For centuries, historians dismissed it as Catholic propaganda, a symbolic punishment story meant to defile her Protestant legacy. But modern forensics gives it a strange, grisly plausibility. The phenomenon is known today as exploding casket syndrome, when gases from decomposition build up inside a sealed coffin until it ruptures. It's rare, but real. Documented even in royal burials across Europe. In a final irony, even her corpse mirrored her life, pressure building behind a sealed, gilded shell until it could no longer hold. Southwell's tale may be part fiction, but its symbolism endures. A monarch so obsessed with control that even death could not contain her. A body sealed by command, rebelling one last time against its confinement. The explosion, whether literal or legendary, became a final metaphor for her reign. An empire held together by willpower, image, and denial, finally breaking under the weight of its own perfection. Elizabeth's death marked more than the end of a queen. It ended a genetic dynasty. The Tudors, who had ruled England for just over a century, vanished with her. There would be no direct descendants, no DNA passed forward to bear her name. And yet, the story of Tudor blood did not stop at the coffin. Modern genetics has begun to resurrect it. In 2012, scientists sequenced the DNA of King Richard III, her ancestor through the Plantagenet line. His skeleton, found beneath a car park in Leicester, confirmed his identity through mitochondrial DNA passed down an unbroken female lineage. That same lineage connects faintly to distant Tudor cousins, revealing shared ancestry stretching back to the 1400s. In 2011, genetic researchers proposed that Henry VIII's KEL antigen mutation, a rare red blood cell trait, may have caused the miscarriages that haunted his wives, reshaping England's history. And in 2019, DNA recovered from relics associated with Mary, Queen of Scots, confirmed the Stuart bloodline that succeeded Elizabeth's throne. But Elizabeth's own genome remains unsequenced, a black hole in Britain's royal genetics. It's not that the science can't do it, it's that England won't. Westminster Abbey still refuses any testing of her remains, calling it incompatible with royal sanctity. Yet new technology might one day outsmart that restriction. In 2023, scientists extracted environmental DNA from the air inside a sealed French tomb, proving it's possible to identify genetic material without opening a coffin. Given the 521-year half-life of DNA, Allentoft et al., Nature 2012, Elizabeth's code may still linger inside her marble vault. And when that day comes, When technology can decode her genome without breaking her rest, the results could illuminate not just her death, but her dynasty. Her genes could tell us whether her mind was destroyed by heavy metals, whether her illnesses were inherited, or whether her final weakness was written into her blood from birth. Until then, her story remains half myth, half molecule, a legend waiting for science to catch up. History remembers her as Gloriana, the Virgin Queen, the Flame of Empire. But behind that title was a woman terrified of being seen without her armor. Her mask of lead was more than makeup. It was her last defense against time, loneliness, and loss. She buried grief beneath paint. She hid exhaustion behind perfection. In that mask, she became untouchable and utterly alone. When her ministers spoke of heirs, she spoke of duty. When they begged her to rest, she whispered to the ghosts of those she'd lost, her mother, her sister, and Essex most of all. She had built an empire by mastering control, and it killed her. Every scar she covered, every portrait she censored, every sleepless night at Richmond was a negotiation with mortality itself. Her bones still rest beneath the abbey, sealed beside her sister Mary. Two queens divided by faith, united by silence. But if her DNA is ever decoded, we might finally see her not as a myth, but as a woman who fought nature, power, and time itself. The mask that made her a legend was also her confession. Every drop of lead, every sleepless night, every choice, written in her code, waiting in the stone. Science has read the genomes of kings, emperors, and even extinct animals. It has extracted the voices of the dead from molecules of bone and dust. But one woman's code, sealed beneath the marble of Westminster, remains untouched. Elizabeth Ode's DNA could rewrite our understanding of the Tudor world. Yet it lies silent, locked behind politics, religion, and legend. Maybe that silence is her final command, or maybe it's her last secret, waiting in the stone for someone brave enough to listen. If you want more forgotten stories where science meets history, subscribe to Root and Relic, and tell us in the comments, should Elizabeth's DNA finally be tested, or should her secrets stay sealed forever?